Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi tahirin. If they were to ask you, what is our objective and what are we to do in this world? The answer that the scriptures and the texts, the Holy Quran and the Ahadith give, is that we have to become Khalifatullah. And this can be proved rationally too, without scriptures. But that would need a separate lecture. I won't go through that now. What does it mean to be a successor of Allah? It means you have to succeed Allah's attributes. So those attributes that Allah has, the attributes of perfection, attributes of the divine attributes of perfection, these have to be incorporated within us, and we have to manifest them. And the more we manifest them, the more Allah-like we become. And the more Allah-like we become, the closer we are, the more qurb and proximity we have to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, for men and women, there are certain attributes of Allah that both of them share, and they can both acquire and both incorporate to the same degree. But there are certain attributes that the woman has the potential to manifest more than the man. The man manifests them also, but the woman has more potential. And likewise, there are some attributes of Allah that the man has the potential to manifest these attributes more than the woman. So the first point is that in order to identify where the identity of the woman lies, the woman has to know which attributes concern her more, and which attributes constitute the identity of the woman, which attributes she has the potential to manifest more than the man. And in those attributes, if she was to fail in manifesting those attributes, she would become less womanly, and she would be failing in her duties. And if you become less womanly, therefore, she would become more and more manly from an irfani, spiritual point of view. These attributes, she has a potential to manifest more than the man. She's failing, and therefore she's becoming more and more like a man in the spiritual sense. That's the first point. The second point is now in relation to, one is first a woman and then a mother. Being a mother comes later, if one is given the tawfiq. And sometimes, based on Allah's wisdom, it may be that a woman is not meant to bear children, and she should accept that wholeheartedly. It doesn't mean it's the end of the road. But to be a mother comes after being a woman. If you want to be a successful mother, you first have to be a successful woman. That will facilitate you becoming a successful mother. But being a woman comes first. And to be a successful woman, in the spiritual sense, otherwise in the economic or materialistic sense, it's all about maybe money, business, qualifications, that kind of thing. That's something else. But to be a successful woman in the spiritual sense is to be Khalifatullah, but especially in those attributes of Allah that the woman has more of a potential to manifest. The more the woman manifests those, the more successful she is spiritually, and now the probabilities of her succeeding in motherhood also becomes more prominent. With motherhood, these attributes now become manifold, increases manifold. She can manifest them to new horizons. And it's this which the Urafa, the mystics, pay a lot of attention to. She was a successful woman before, spiritually. She manifested those attributes that she had more inclined to manifest. She did those spiritually and she succeeded. But now she's entering the world of motherhood. She can manifest them to new horizons that she maybe wasn't able to manifest before. And this is an opportunity, and it's specific to women. The mystics, like Imam Khomeini, rahmatullah alayh, they've paid attention to this point. And when they design revolutions, they look at these kind of points when it comes to women, the role of women, the position of women, how the woman has to be careful she doesn't fall in the traps of modernity or the negative aspects of modernity. She has to be careful not to be West toxified. For example, in England or in the UK, in the spiritual sense, men and women are the same. Women are just like men, and they want to be just like men. And even if they praise themselves because, for example, in England they had a woman prime minister. They praise themselves, for example, but that woman was a man spiritually, was just like a man, and was manifesting those attributes that the man manifests more, those attributes of Allah that the man manifests more. She was trespassing in those areas. And the result is just a man. Now the woman was just, phenotypically she was a woman, but there's nothing to praise here. And at the head of a country, when you have a woman who's spiritually a man, it's going to cause problems throughout the whole country. That's not to say women can't be prime ministers, but they have to be women though, in the spiritual sense. And if a man is a prime minister, they have to be a man as a prime minister, not a woman in the spiritual sense. Imam Khomeini, in one of his works, he says, the woman is a grand human being, society's nurturers. So here, the first attribute here we can see is that she's a nurturer. The attribute of Rabb. Allah is Rabbul Alameen, Allah's Rububiyyah. This is Allah's nurturing attribute. And here, women manifest this attribute, this nurturing, more than men. But once they enter the world of motherhood, this nurturing becomes multiplied many times more. Even before motherhood, she had it more than the man, the potential at least. But with motherhood, this becomes exaggerated a lot. It becomes accentuated a lot. So they are society's nurturers, a grand human being. Humans are discovered from the lapse of women, true humans. Humans who are humans, not animals. Humans who have the ethical dispositions of humans, not those who are phenotypically humans, but on the inside they're just like animals. Humans are discovered from the lapse of women. After all, she's the educator of humankind. Another name of Allah, Mu'allim. It's in Joshan Kabir. She manifests this teaching and educating capacity more than the man. The man also is an educator. But when it comes to spiritual salvation, she can manifest more educating than the man. When it comes to mathematics, it may be a different story. We're talking about spiritual salvation. The prosperity and wretchedness of a given society depends on the existence and status of women. As I said before, that introduction I gave was for this purpose. Depends on the status of women. Are women living like women? When I say like women, I mean the spiritual sense. In any given environment, is that environment friendly in the way that it enhances and facilitates women manifesting those attributes of Allah that they have an inner predisposition to manifest more than men? That environment which allows that, that's good for women. and then women can do their duties much better. But environments which are against this and nurture women in a sense that they become more and more like a man, that's going to be disastrous. Because if the status of women is that, just to be like men, that's going to lead to the wretchedness of society. They don't have a true nurturer, a true educator. And in Western societies, most of them anyway, they are feeding this kind of mentality. They are sponsoring, paying for this. Everything is based on this, that the woman, and it may have a very nice soundbite to it, women have equal rights to men. But this having equal rights to men is in reality, no one is against that. Women having equal rights to men, it's something natural. But behind the veils, this very nice soundbite, the narrative is different. The narrative is this: women become more and more like men. And so here they're becoming less womanly in the spiritual sense. And that causes problems in any society. Living in such a society can be poisonous. Having your children raised in that society can be poisonous. Sometimes you may see countries in Africa where they may not be, in quotes, civilized like those in the West, as they like to think. But the women are women. They may be poor. They may be looking for, the basic necessities from day to day. But the women, those attributes of Allah, they're manifesting it. That society, even if you call it uncivilized, whatever you want to call it, and you want to call those societies in the West the most civilized in the world, in spiritual terms, that's poisonous in the West. But that poor so-called country in the East or in Africa or wherever, that is more spiritually friendly for the woman. But since now we've been brainwashed in this global media and propaganda for women to think like this, that they want to be like men. As I say, equal rights, women working, all this I have no problem with. I'm just giving you the general criterion how to base your life on this criterion. Everyone can judge for themselves. But one has to look deep down and see whether they are manifesting these attributes of Allah or not. By correctly, Imam Khomeini then continues, by correctly educating herself, she educates humans. And by correctly educating herself, she frees nations. So look, she educates humans as humans, not animals. You need a woman to do that. You need those attributes of Allah that a woman manifests to educate humans. And only then nations will be free. People in the West aren't free. Yes, they say democracy and freedom. But what kind of life is it that everyone has a mortgage and they have to run morning to night like a robot to pay off a mortgage? What kind of freedom is that? What kind of spiritual freedom? They have no spiritual freedom. They're like slaves, but in a very nice environment. Not like slaves in a very bad environment, in a third world country. Just the same. The concept is the same. But it's slavery within a modernity setting. And it's very belittling for Muslims to honor themselves and praise themselves to be living in those cultures. They're belittling themselves. It's undignifying. Even migrating to such countries, it's undignifying. It's belittling themselves. When you migrate to somewhere where you can't manifest those attributes that you have more of a potential to manifest, you're belittling yourself. You're ruining your spiritual salvation, only to get a bigger car, a bigger house. spiritual salvation is the goal. None of the big house or the big car will do any benefit for you in the hereafter. Now, okay, living in a poor country, what's the problem? In that poor country, though, spiritual salvation is more easy to attain to. There are less barriers. Okay, you eat less. You live in a smaller house. You have a smaller car. It doesn't matter. But don't play around with your salvation. The source of all prosperities emanate and springs from her lap. Okay. So that was one passage from Imam Khomeini. If these attributes, though, the woman or the mother, like nurturing, manifesting Allah's rububiyyah, manifesting Allah's rahmaniyyah, her mercy, the mercy she has, as a woman and as a mother even more, manifesting her jamal, her beauty, these things she attributes these attributes of Allah more than the man. If these are to be compromised, okay, motherhood will be compromised. And if motherhood is compromised, that society, the nation, is going to be compromised spiritually. Now, in the West, we see this. We see this, in the West. They look down upon mothers who bring up their children for years inside the house and say that we are paying your taxes, why don't you work? So after a few months, it's requiring for the woman to go and work and leave the infant in the hands of others. Look, really it's a form of, I don't know the exact word, but it really is a form of abuse that it's happening upon the children especially. And the Muslims freely do it in the West. And they pride themselves in living in such a culture. So here, if a woman wants to bear and nurture children, they're looked down upon. And then who do they give the children to? First, they say, go and work. And there's no problem with working. Don't get me wrong. No one in Islam is against women working. But when she works, she has to always evaluate that when I'm working, am I compromising with those duties or not, with those attributes of Allah? If she's working in a manner, either quantitatively or qualitatively, in a manner that she's manifesting those attributes of Allah less and becoming, as a result, more and more manly, as a woman, she has to be careful here. She has to make a decision. She shouldn't continue abusing her spiritual salvation. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that don't work. I'm saying that you have to abide by these criteria. So, they say in the West, after a very short period of maternity leave, go and work, in quotes, be more like a man, and leave your infant to who? Who are you leaving your infants to? In the nursery, in primary care, and so on and so forth. That love, affection, and mercy that the mother has to the child. The child the heart of the child won't accept anything more than from the mother. The words of the mother has the most effect on the infant. The love of the mother you can't substitute it. It's second to none. And then you take the child from that environment and you place them in an environment where it's almost free from love and affection. This is really oppression here upon the child. And then Imam Khomeini, on this issue, he says that he says, now, due to going and being given jobs and professions, the child is taken away from you. He was speaking to mothers, and he was comparing the time before the revolution and after the revolution. The child is taken away from you and becomes detached from a very strong attachment and affinity second to none. That's with the mother. Is taken away from that attachment, that takwini providential relationship, that natural relationship. They're detached from it. The child is given to someone else to bring up, and then the mother is said, you go and work, you get a job outside. And then Imam says, this leads to grudges in that child. That child at that very early age, within their soul, you have sown the seeds of grudges. And then he continues, the love of the mother has been stolen from them. And these grudges become the source of all ills. Robbery emanates from such grudges. Killing and crime emanate from such grudges. Look, this is how a leader wants to manage a society. And here, the mother has to... Now, this was all theoretical. Sometimes you see the mother herself has problems. She's acquired these problems. She can't raise a child. They may be psychological those problems may be psychological in nature. They may be psychiatric in nature. There may be other problems. That's because the fault lies with how she was brought up, and then how her mother was brought up, and her mother and her mother. These things happen. Many women, they inherit a lot of, in quotes again, spiritual garbage, and it causes a lot of problems in their life. But the theory is this. The ideal is this. Now, don't think you have to be 100%. But as long as year after year you're improving, you're getting better, you're not deteriorating in relation to your spiritual salvation. Okay. Now, to put this more into practice, look, in the first 7 years, we're told that we shouldn't discipline the child. And because the child doesn't have, aql, and doesn't understand if you tell him or her off, they won't understand it. And it can be a source of confusion for them sometimes. And it can cause a lot of problems. Even the West have understood this, in some parts of it. But this thing of disciplining, yes, in America they tried this out. They started disciplining from 2 years of age. They disciplined their eating habits, their sleeping habits, when to sleep, when to eat. But we don't have this in Islam. The child is free, there's no disciplining. Yes, maybe if he or she puts the hand into fire, these are exceptions. I'm talking about the common thing, not the exceptions here. Yes, the exceptions are treated exceptionally, but we're talking about the norm. And so, yeah, we don't believe in disciplining their nutritional appetites and their sleeping appetites and these kind of things. They eat when they want to, and they sleep when they want to. And even when you want to educate them, it shouldn't be done in a disciplinary way. It should be done in a way that it's discipline-free. For example, like playing. But, how you do that, in every culture it may be different. There's no point in me giving you a strategy on how to educate in a non-disciplinary way, because your guess is just as good as mine. I'm just giving you the general principles upon which you can build your own strategy. And so here, it would be ideal in these first 7 years for the woman to nurture the child at home, and the mother being the teacher. Not necessarily the teacher in maths or sciences, the teacher, the spiritual teacher. For the first 7 years, that's an ideal. But especially, the minimum, when I say minimum, not from a Sharia point of view, from a Tariqa point of view, you should really, for the first 2 or 3 years at least, until they start speaking freely, you should keep them at home and they should be under your auspices. That would be an ideal. The first 7 would be even better. Now, this is something, the culture of having maids and au pairs is quite strong in this part of the world. And it's not a bad thing as long as those au pairs and maids aren't abused in any way. But here, when you have such an opportunity, you can be assisted, the woman at home, because we don't want the woman, especially the young mother, to be burdened with chores. That hadith which speaks of the woman is like a curved rib bone. Don't straighten her, let her be. Because if you want to straighten her, she'll break. Here, some have interpreted it as that don't straighten her, it's like don't burden her with these chores, because they're not wajib at the end of the day. If she wants to do them and she's not burdened, it's okay. It's a form of nurturing. But her nurturing, there's a hierarchy of things, of how she nurtures. Nurturing children has much more importance than nurturing in the form of hoovering or cleaning. And sometimes hoovering or cleaning, they can burden the mother to such an extent that it will inhibit her being able to manifest those divine attributes. When the mother is burdened with those chores, sometimes it affects her. She doesn't adorn herself inside the house. This is something which can be prominent in certain cultures. The woman doesn't adorn herself in front of the husband and children. Even if it's a necklace. But she doesn't do it. And it's the lifestyle she's adopted which has made this happen. And if the husband wants to say, I don't want you to wear makeup or adorn yourself, that is something extremely of spiritual negativity. A man who says that to the woman, there's something wrong, severely wrong there. That man, yes, it's problematic. He's speaking outside his fitrah. The woman too shouldn't let that happen. So she shouldn't be burdened because she has to manifest Allah's Jamal, for example. Outer Jamal and inner Jamal. But if she's just very negligent of herself inside the house and that outer beauty isn't manifested, that causes problems. Now, I gave this example because sometimes when she becomes burdened with chores, it makes this happen. If she has maids of a senior age which can help her with their experience, she'll be alleviated from these difficult tasks, which isn't her duty anyway, and she can focus freely. The curved rib bone, let it be. It's of maximal benefit for your breathing. Don't straighten it, it will break. The woman too. The more freer she is, she can manifest those attributes of Allah. So, in the first 7 years, especially if you want to be a careers woman, choose to have 2, 3 children, for example, in a 10-year period. And your career and your job and profession, you can then focus more on that later. At least a 10-year period for 2 or 3 children where you focus on them and you're at home in the way explained, that would be beneficial. If you can do more, it doesn't matter. But some people, they're after a career. That's not bad. But keep the balance though. Keep a period of time for children, a 10-year period, for example, and then you can focus on your career. But even when you focus on your career, don't forget those principles though. Don't become man-like. Those attributes of Allah, you have to stick to it. Those attributes of Allah that you have a potential more to manifest, they have to be abided by. Okay, another statement from Imam Khomeini. He said, the value of a single night of the mother with the child surpasses years of the responsible father's efforts. This is an arif speaking, a mystic speaking, someone who's understood the woman. You see, sometimes you speak about the woman from a fiqhi angle. Okay, that's very limited. It's okay, because that's fiqh. They look at the woman from that angle. That's okay. But sometimes you look at the woman from an irfani angle. You look at her differently. You know, each science of Islam looks at a given subject matter based on its own principles. That doesn't mean, or that's not to say fiqh is a lower science than irfan. No. Fiqh is an important science. We need it. Irfan is. But they look at different subject matters differently, and it's all respectable. The embodiment of affection and mercy in the mother's luminous outlook is a manifestation of the mercy and affection of the Lord of all worlds, Rabbul Alameen. When the woman is manifesting affection and mercy, she is manifesting this Rabbul Alameen of Allah, this attribute. See, that's very important for the prosperity of a society. The more we have such women manifesting in this way, that society will be prosperous. The Almighty Allah has blended the mother's heart and soul with the light of mercy of Allah's Lordship to the extent that it can't be identified anywhere save within the mother. Such a manifestation you can't see anywhere in the world except in the entity of the mother. And Allah has granted this eternal mercy to them. Now why? For their heaven-breaking burdens from the time of conception, during gestation, during labor, during birth, and so on. It's these burdens that she's undergoing. That these burdens, we'll speak more about this a bit tomorrow, but it's burdens. There's a relationship between undergoing burdens and enhancing your tawheed. Undergoing burdens and being able to manifest those attributes of Allah which are more specific to you. There's a relationship here. The noble tradition that reads, "Heaven lies under the mother's feet," is referring to a reality. Such delicate wording is emphasizing the mightiness of the matter, as well as warning children of the fact that they should seek prosperity and heaven from beneath their mother's feet. Now what does that mean? And that they should observe their sanctity as they observe Allah's. In the same way they observe Allah's sanctity, they have to observe the sanctity of the mother here. What does that mean? And that they should seek their immaculate Lord's satisfaction through the satisfaction of their mothers. This is it's a protocol of spirituality. You want Allah's satisfaction? One of the best, if not the best way, is through the mother's satisfaction. And that's why the logic of the verse of the Holy Quran too, after serving Allah, it says, display benevolence to your parents. And in many traditions, the mother is emphasized more. The father too, but the mother more. The rationale is that if you obey your mother in everything except sins, you would suppress your ego. You want to do many things yourself, but you don't do them because your mother doesn't allow it or doesn't want it. You say, okay, no problem, I won't do it. There are even tariqas based on this reality. That tariq is based on this reality that you be a slave to your mother. In the Sharia, respect to parents, it's more limited. But in the tariqa, it's a very broad spectrum. The tariqa says that whatever your mother says, you do, except the sins. Things which are not enjoined by Allah. And even then, you respect her maximally. So here, with the tariqa, if you were to abide by this, you would keep on suppressing your ego. Because you want your own life. You want to make your own decisions. For example, you want to be a linguist, your mother says, no, be this. Okay. Look what a sacrifice that is. You want to marry this person, your mother says, no. Look what a sacrifice is. But if not marrying leads you to sin, then you don't listen to your mother, for example. Sins, that is outside this, is a different jurisdiction. You don't obey your mother in sin. Now, no one can do that 100%, and in those tariqas, the mentor would tell if the student can practice this. And if the mentor felt that the student has the potential to manifest this at least more than 75%, they would allow them, otherwise they would reject them. There's only one scholar who was speaking about this tariqa in Rome. And yes. So, here, motherhood is of primary importance for society. It's because of certain attributes that she manifests more, that has no substitute, and is secondary to none. And therefore, society, its success, salvation, spirituality-wise, is dependent on such a figure. And after going through these last few points, we see that the status of the mother, as seen in Islam, has been stripped away at its core, and it's something totally bare in the West. What it means to be the mother in the West is so bare and free from all value that now foster mothers, for example, have the equal status to the mother who has given birth to a child. That doesn't mean a foster mother has no value. They have a lot of value in bringing up a child, a foster mother. But to strip the womb mother and regard her the same as any other unrelated one, that is it's a natural consequence of modernity and what's happened. Finally, and maybe tomorrow we can speak more about this, for the woman, this being a mother enables her to incorporate many attributes of Allah. And this the scholars have extrapolated from the large wealth of ahadith that exist. They go through those ahadith and say the rationale of this hadith, which is pertaining to mother-children relationships, they say the rationale is because when the mother does this, she'll be incorporating this attribute of Allah. When she does that, she's incorporating that. We'll go through this a bit more, inshallah, tomorrow. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى الطاهرين.
Assalamu alaikum. When you talk of the spiritual aspect, could you explain it a little bit more, please? The upliftment in a woman between a man and the differences. When you refer to the spiritual aspect of a woman.
So the point I was making was our aim is to become Khalifatullah, succeeding Allah. That means to succeed Allah in His attributes, to manifest Allah's attributes. Some attributes of Allah, the woman has more of a potential to manifest. Some attributes, the man has more of a potential to manifest. Even though the woman may manifest them, the man has more of a potential to manifest them, can manifest them more. Some of them are equal, they manifest equally. Now here, with Allah's Rububiyyah, Allah's Rahmaniyyah, Allah's Jamal and other attributes, here, if the woman adopts a lifestyle where she doesn't manifest these, or manifests these lesser and lesser, she would be becoming more and more like a man in the spiritual sense. Because her identity, spiritually wise, is dependent on the fact that she has to manifest those divine attributes of perfection which a man can't. This is her objective in being Khalifatullah. And this is a fitri thing, it's part of her creation. It's nothing specific to Islam. This is not something which Islam has brought. You go in all cultures, in the Amazon, Africa, everywhere, anthropologically you see that the woman and the status of women is seen in areas of rububiyyah, nurturing, in beauty, in mercy, affection, and so on and so forth. Now the problem is in marriage, for example. A woman who spiritually is a man, in marriage, it's a marriage between two men. Or a man who's spiritually a woman, it's a marriage between two women spiritually. That's doomed to failure. In counseling, this is important. Sometimes you see the counselor in a marriage counselor, they say, no, the woman actually is a good woman. She's manifesting those attributes okay. And the man is manifesting those attributes as a man. That's a good sign. There's some hope here, how to build this relationship. And usually the strategy is reconciliation. The man gives a top 3 list of priorities for him that he wants from the wife. The wife gives a top 3 list. And then the scholar has to kind of intermediate between the two. That there is hope, because they're both acting as they should be. It's just an ego problem they have. Either the ethical problem, yes. But sometimes no. You see that spiritually, you're dealing with 2 men or 2 women. That's doomed to spiritual failure. That's going to be very difficult. I'm not saying you offer divorce as a first course of action. That's the last course of action. But that's going to be very difficult to make. So the point is, before you marry, these things have to be sorted out. And that's why this idea of kuf, one's equivalent, is something which Islam has brought, and the scholars have expanded. This will minimize the potential tensions of a future marriage between 2 men or 2 women in the spiritual sense can bring about. Yes. Yes, so that was the general principle. But when you want to adopt a lifestyle, you have to always have this in mind. Whatever your lifestyle, whatever you want to do, make sure those attributes aren't tampered with, aren't compromised with. That if you choose a job with heavy hours, and those heavy hours burden you in such a way that back home you can't nurture, beautify, have mercy, there's something wrong there. You have to lessen the hours. Yes. Yes. Oh, no question here. Yes. It says, yeah. As we understand, did all the house chores, upbringing the children, all well without a maid? How would you advise us to do so in this something and time? Did all the house chores, upbringing? It's not very clear to me what the question is. So here, they did the upbringing and the house chores without a maid, okay? How would you advise to do so in this time and age? No, well if you can't do it, you can't do it. You shouldn't burden yourself with chores. It's not the responsibility of a woman. The woman has two wajib duties for the man. One is that she shouldn't leave the house without the man's permission. Now that may not be very applicable in the sense that before marriage this is sorted. Because when the woman is, let's say, a businesswoman or a nurse or a student, they're assuming that she's going to continue. So this doesn't mean every time she, as a student or a businesswoman or a nurse, wants to leave the house, she has to ask the man. Although it may be polite in certain cultures, but that's not... But those places which go against the best interest of the man, she would need to get permission. The man is fearful of her going somewhere and he sees his interest at stake. That's more applicable. That's one. And the second one is sexual gratification. Now that also, I'm not talking about the exceptions, if they're ill or that kind of thing. You know, there's no rape, na'udhu billah. This kind of thing is all rubbish. We don't have that in Islam. And this gratifying, it has to be in something which is on a par with the norm. They're not expected to do things outside the norm. But here, this is a wajib action. And if she refrains from that, it would be, if she refrains from it without an excuse, without an excuse, it would be problematic. These two are wajib. The rest aren't. But that doesn't mean she shouldn't do them. The more she nurtures, the better. The point is she shouldn't burden herself. That's the point here. If she burdens herself, she'll be compromising. So a solution for this, I don't know. It's expecting too much, especially from women today. The women of today is different from 1400 years ago, is even different from 60 years ago. They've been raised differently, they're a bit pampered differently. Yes. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes.
When you spoke about the period of a woman raising her children, many times she is not as involved in her society as she would normally be because she's obviously busy in the home raising sometimes 3 children under the age of 10. And it might affect her self-confidence or her own intellectual development. What would you suggest if she can't attend, for example, programs and things like that on a community level? What would you suggest for her to practice at home? For example, should she have a study structure for herself? Should she try to go out and interact more with people, or is her priority the raising of the children?
Yes, no, the priority is raising of the children, and if it means never attending to community programs, so be it. Especially certain community programs, it may even do more harm to her and to the children. So, no, you shouldn't be bothered by not attending community programs. But, yes, so the priority is the children at home, under the auspices of the mother, if possible, having maids to help her with the chores, at least. But then her affection and mercy and everything else, it's under her. Education-wise, though, only if the mother is educated, and only in that which she's educated in, she should teach the children. Because another problem is that unqualified mothers are teaching aqa'id to the children. and the aqaid is false. On the whole, the majority of cases, they're teaching tawheed in a very bad way, nubuwwat in a very bad way. They're explaining fiqh in a very negative way. So she shouldn't think she's a teacher in different sciences. She's a mother. And as a mother, in the first 7 years, it would be ideal to affection, give mercy. In the ahadith, we see a lot of traveling is beneficial, different sports, handwriting. It's a human being. The human being has many dimensions to it. The mother can help in satiating all those dimensions. Knowledge and disciplining, it's all in the second 7 years. And when you look at the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, when to teach them the wudu, when to teach them La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, it's a very little amount of knowledge in the first 7 years are mentioned. Yes. You shouldn't overwhelm them with knowledge. This idea of, yes, unless if you want to overwhelm them, it has to be done in an environment of playing, but there's no need. You shouldn't bring up the child unidimensionally and only teach them religion morning to night. They have to be built with stability. All aspects of their soul have to be catered for, and that involves traveling, handwriting, sports, playing, their psychological needs, their social needs, all these things together. Disciplining, knowledge and all this kind, put it all for the second 7 years. Not all, most of it. Where there they have to abide by you like a slave. Their discipline has meaning. There they have aql, they understand now. And since you acted properly in the first 7 years, you've gained their trust too. Because you let them free in the first 7 years. They say to themselves, this person who made me free all this time, now he or she is telling me to do this and do that. It must be for a reason. You've gained their trust. And also in the second 7 years, since puberty happens in the second 7 years and they have to abide by Allah's commands, it would be a good practice to discipline them, so that they become used to submitting to Allah's command. Yes. Okay. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala tahirin.